there's one thing that separates a good band from a true legend, it's what happens on stage. It is there, in front of the audience, that rock shows its real strength. Without studio tricks, just sweat, distortion, and pure energy. The albums you are about to see are not just live recordings, they are historical milestones. Recordings that immortalized unique moments and proved that rock is immortal. Get ready, because here are 10 rock live albums that are so killer, they became legends. At the turn of the 70s, The Who was already one of the giants of British rock. Formed by Roger Daltrey on powerful vocals, Pete Townshend with his explosive guitar, John Entwistle on the precise bass, and Keith Moon commanding a chaotic and brilliant drum set. The band came off the success of Tommy, their first rock opera, and brought a devastating energy to the stage that made them an absolute reference in the live rock scene.
Just to sign my baby. People try to put us down. Just because.
The recording of Live at Leeds took place in February 1970 inside the University of Leeds in an intimate show that became legendary. Initially, the album had only 6 tracks, but over the years it gained expanded reissues. A curiosity is that the record was pressed to look like a bootleg, including notes, scratch-outs, and even copies of contracts, reinforcing the idea of authenticity and spontaneity that the group wanted to convey.
That's what happens when you say goodnight to me.
The album is considered by many to be the best live album of all time, capturing the band's raw force without studio touch-ups. The simple beige cover looked like a document folder, but became iconic precisely because of this rawness. Highlights include My Generation, transformed into a long jam, and Substitute with incendiary energy. Now hold on tight, because here comes the spark that ignited live rock forever.
And a young man ain't got nothing in the world to say. You would think my shoes are made of leather when you move in right up close to me. Generation, my generation, it's my generation. 6 foot every day. Too much, too much.
The Allman Brothers Band emerged in the late 60s with an innovative approach, mixing blues, rock, and jazz in long, virtuous improvisations. At the height of their classic lineup, the group featured Duane Allman and Dickie Betts on guitars, Greg Allman on vocals and keyboards, Barry Oakley on bass, and the duo Butch Trucks and J-Mo on drums. This combination created a dense and emotional sound that placed the band among the most respected in the United States. At Fillmore East was recorded in March 1971 during a series of shows at the legendary New York venue. Duane Allman insisted the record be captured live to catch the band's true essence, as stage improvisations were their great trademark. Curiously, much of the album comes from only 2 nights of performances, but the intensity was such that it resulted in an instant classic. The cover shows the musicians sitting casually in front of the stage's speakers, conveying the raw, road trip atmosphere. In the repertoire, tracks like Whipping Post and In Memory of Elizabeth Reed stand out, with solos that seem to have no end and moments of pure collective inspiration. Just feel that devastating sound with solos that seem to never end.
Wake up, mama, turn your lamp down low. The bell has tolled, my baby called that train and gone.
Deep Purple, in its Mark II lineup, was composed of Ian Gillan on vocals, Richie Blackmore on guitar, John Lord on keyboards, Roger Glover on bass, and Ian Pace on drums. This phase is considered the band's most classic, with studio albums like Machine Head cementing their status as hard rock giants. The group was known for explosive performances and grandiose improvisations, making their shows mandatory events for fans of the genre. Made in Japan was recorded in August 1972 during the tour through Asia, especially in Osaka and Tokyo. Interestingly, Deep Purple initially had no interest in releasing a live album, but the Japanese insisted and financed the production. With no overdubs or corrections, the recording captured the band in its purest form, with expansive solos and intense interactions between the musicians, especially Blackmore and Lord. The cover, with its golden tone and simple photo, perhaps didn't show the grandeur of the content, but it soon became emblematic. Tracks like Smoke on the Water in an even more intense version and Highway Star with sweeping energy are high points. Prepare your heart and feel this sample of hard rock in its raw state.
Nobody gonna take my car, I'm gonna race it through the crowd. No one sees the things you do, 'cause I stand in front. Come on! Come on! Come on!
In the mid-70s, Kiss was still striving to establish itself as a major band, with Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley, Ace Frehley, and Peter Criss forming the classic lineup. Despite the incendiary energy on stage, their studio albums couldn't convey the same intensity. That's when the band decided to record a live album, betting on the visual and sonic power of their performances to finally win over the audience. Alive was released in 1975 and brought the band with a production that mixed live recordings and studio touch-ups, although this has never diminished its importance. The album was decisive in boosting Kiss's career, transforming them into a global phenomenon. Among the curiosities, it's worth mentioning that much of the material was recorded in Detroit, a city that became one of the band's biggest fan strongholds. The cover, with the four members in explosive stage poses, summarizes the essence of Kiss: spectacle, energy, and theatricality. The repertoire brings electrifying versions of songs that only truly came alive on stage. Highlights include Rock and Roll All Night, turned into an anthem, and Deuce, full of weight and attitude. Ready to feel the explosion? Then let Kiss set your ears on fire.
Get up and get your grandma out of here. Spider. Get the fire out. 'Cause it's that out of sight, baby. Out of sight. Out on the street for a living. Bitches on it. Wanna rock and roll all night.
Led Zeppelin, formed by Robert Plant, Jimmy Page, John Paul Jones, and John Bonham, was already the biggest rock band in the world by the mid-70s. The group had a reputation for selling out stadiums and delivering intense, long shows, full of improvisation and virtuosity. With so much power on stage, it was natural for a live album to come along to document this legendary phase of the British band.
I said the way you move, don't make you slap, don't make you groove. If there's a bustle in your hedgerow, don't be alarmed, man.
The song Remains the Same was recorded in July 1973 at Madison Square Garden in New York, but only released 3 years later in 1976. The record was accompanied by a concert film that mixed stage scenes with surreal sequences acted out by the band members. Despite some criticism about edits and cuts, the material captured the grand atmosphere of Zeppelin live. The cover depicts a ruined cinema in the Old Street Studios in London, where the group rehearsed for their 1973 tour. The album features epic versions of tracks like Stairway to Heaven and Dazed and Confused, which together surpass half an hour of incendiary improvisations. Prepare now to hear a sample of the raw force that made Zeppelin a stage myth. I invite you on a journey full of psychedelia through albums from the late 60s that influenced everything, absolutely everything that came after. Click on the card that is appearing at the top of your screen. Thin Lizzy, led by the charismatic bassist and vocalist Phil Lynott, had Scott Gorham and Brian Robertson on guitars and Brian Downey on drums at the time. This lineup is considered one of the band's most iconic, responsible for elevating the group to an international level with its melodic and energetic hard rock. Lynott, in particular, was the soul of the band, combining urban poetry and a striking stage presence.
That had been away. Tonight there's gonna be a jailbreak, so don't you be around. He called to Jimmy the Weed. He said, hey.
Released in 1978, Live and Dangerous was recorded in part during the Johnny the Fox and Bad Reputation tours. Although considered one of the best live albums, there are debates about the amount of studio touch-ups made. Producer Tony Visconti claimed that much of the vocals and guitars were re-recorded, but this hasn't lessened the impact. The record sounds visceral and accurately represents the power of Thin Lizzy live.
Don't believe me if I tell you, not a word of this is true. I'm gonna myself in. Tonight,
The cover, showing Phil Lynott in a theatrical pose on stage, is one of the most iconic images of 70s rock. Among the highlights are The Boys Are Back in Town, which became the band's definitive anthem, and Jailbreak, with its rebellious energy.
tell you, especially if I tell you that I'm in love with you.
Check out a sample of the sonic earthquake that made history and solidified Thin Lizzy as a legend.
Tonight there's gonna be a jailbreak somewhere in Rosalie. Rosalie, still in the moonlight. It's got me in its spotlight. Roll me over and turn me around. Let me get spinning till our boys are back in town. Boys are back in town. So
Cheap Trick was formed by Robin Zander on vocals, Rick Nielsen on guitar, Tom Peterson on bass, and Bunny Carlos on drums. The band mixed hard rock, power pop, and a dose of irreverence that won over both heavy fans and those who preferred more accessible melodies. Despite having released a few albums, it was on stage that the group found their true place to shine. At Budokan was recorded in Tokyo in 1978, when the band was received like superstars by the Japanese audience, who already idolized them. Initially, the record was only going to be released in Japan, but the success was so great that it gained a worldwide edition. Curiously, it was this live recording that transformed Cheap Trick into an international phenomenon, opening doors for the band's global career. The cover shows the group in full swing on stage, surrounded by ecstatic Japanese fans, capturing the electrifying atmosphere of those nights. Highlights include I Want You to Want Me, which became a global hit, and Surrender, with an irresistible chorus and youthful energy. Just feel that devastating sound that conquered the world, starting from the land of the samurai. By the late 70s, AC/DC was already established as one of the most explosive hard rock bands. Led by brothers Angus and Malcolm Young on guitars, Bon Scott on vocals, Cliff Williams on bass, and Phil Rudd on drums, the group had a raw, direct, and no-frills sound. The band's strength came precisely from this incendiary simplicity, which turned any stage into an electric battlefield. Recorded in Glasgow, Scotland in 1978, If You Want Blood, You've Got It was the band's first official live album. Unlike other productions laden with overdubs, AC/DC kept the recording raw and visceral, faithfully reflecting the power of their shows. A curiosity is that the tour that spawned the album was still focused on the Powerage album, which hadn't achieved huge commercial success but became a cult favorite among fans.
When I pay the price, the rock and roll is gone, and all across the land.
The cover is one of rock's most iconic. Angus Young with his guitar impaled on his body, symbolizing the band's insane intensity. On the set list, Tracks like Whole Lotta Rosie and High Voltage show the group at the height of their rock fury. Prepare now to hear a sample charged with electricity. Rush, the Canadian trio formed by Geddy Lee on bass, Neil Peart on drums, and Alex Lifeson on guitar, was already one of the most respected groups in progressive rock. Each member was a virtuoso on their instrument, and together they created complex songs full of time changes and atmospheric moods. Heading into the 80s, the band was riding the success of albums like Permanent Waves and Moving Pictures. Exit Stage Left was recorded in 1980 and 1981, mainly during shows in Montreal and Glasgow. The title refers to the catchphrase of the cartoon character Snagglepuss from Hanna-Barbera, a touch of humor characteristic of the group. The production sought to capture the band's impressive precision live, but also with special care on the sound, making it clean and grand. The cover is a true collage of references to the band's history, with elements from previous albums illustrating the scenery. Highlights include Tom Sawyer, perhaps Rush's most famous song, and La Via Strangiato, an instrumental piece that showcases all the trio's virtuosity. Check out Rush's precision, taking music to another level of intensity. In 1984, Iron Maiden was already one of the biggest heavy metal bands on the planet, with Bruce Dickinson on vocals, Steve Harris on bass, Adrian Smith and Dave Murray on guitars, and Nickel McBrain on drums. This classic lineup came from the resounding success of Powerslave and was in the middle of the World Slavery Tour, one of the biggest and most ambitious tours in rock history. Live After Death was recorded mainly at the Long Beach Arena in California over 4 nights in 1985, and also included recordings from the Hammersmith Odeon in London in 1984. The album is considered one of the best live metal records, not only for the killer set list, but also for the intensity of the performance. A curiosity is that the show included scenery inspired by ancient Egypt in one of the most grandiose productions ever seen until then. The cover, illustrated by Derek Riggs, shows the mascot Eddie rising from his tomb in one of Maiden's most iconic artworks. In the set list, Ace is High with its incendiary opening, and The Trooper, an absolute classic from the band, Shine. Now, listen to this sample and understand why this album is Maiden's immortal scream. These were some of the live albums that proved why rock on stage is unbeatable. Recordings that not only made their mark, but also helped build the genre's legend. But I want to know, in your opinion, which live albums can't be left out of the next episode? Write it down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, leave your like and share it only with that crew you know really breathes rock. Also, take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel and not miss anything that's coming up. Thanks a lot for watching until the end. Until next time, and may the volume of rock always be at max.